Matt Penny, welcome to MedTech Unboxed.
Thanks, Steve. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, we've been talking about this for a while and had a few conversations. Sometimes I do these podcasts. Sometimes when I have these pre-conversations or just a general conversation, it's like, I wish I could hit the record buttons because there's so much good content. So hopefully we can reproduce it here.
Yeah, a lot to talk about.
Yeah, great. Yeah, let's we got a lot to talk about. First, we want to talk about the work that you do as an associate professor at North Carolina State University, right here in the great state of North Carolina, preparing, yeah, preparing these young students for a career in medtech, and talking to you about what you do and some of the program and the stages that you go through is really awesome, and I'm excited for you to share that with the audience. And so why don't we dig into that, and then we'll talk about some real interesting surgical robotic technology that you can share at the work that you're doing at NOAA Medical.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. So why don't you tell us about your role at NC State, and then how you're preparing the future generation in medtech?
Yeah. So we have a really unique program at NC State and UNC. It's a joint department of biomedical engineering between UNC and NC State. And I'm just now stepping into a director of the master's program in medical device, really medtech innovation and entrepreneurship. The program it got started in 2019. I've been a part of it since the inception, teaching a class in the fall, but I've, as I said, just recently stepped into a director role. The program it's a small cohort of students. We take anywhere from 12 to 15 students annually, and then we walk them through everything it takes to identify unmet needs in the clinic, try to figure out how do you develop prototypes, and how do you develop solutions for those unmet needs, and then how do you wrap a business model around those, and understand what it takes to stand up a company, what it takes to get funding, dilutive, non-dilutive. What does it look like to actually run a medical device company, quality management systems, risk management, the works. And we take them through to the end of the year. We have a showcase at the end of the year where we demonstrate the technologies that we've developed as part of the program. And we have the students, give a business pitch as well about what it would take to get their technology, their solution to market, through the regulatory approval process, things like that.
Yeah, that's so awesome that you kind of cover so many facets, right? It's one thing to have a great idea to meet or to solve a gap or a unmet need, but there's the regulatory QMS you talked about, the business case. There's so many other variables involved in taking a device from an idea to the market.
Yeah, it's really, really challenging. It's one of the most challenging areas, I think, in product development in general, because you have to satisfy the regulatory bodies in order to get your products on market. You have to satisfy your end users, patients or providers, so they want to use your product. And then the patients and the providers sometimes aren't the people who are paying for it. So you have to satisfy the payers as well. And even the payer side is split between, the government or private payers, and then the hospital, the value assessment teams, things like that. So you really have to, there's so many different stakeholders that you have to be aware of and understand their incentive structures, their systems, and design your solution, not just as, the physical or digital aspect of the solution, but the holistic solution, in that case, the business model, the business plan, like how you're going to give value to them, and extract some value back for your business so that you have a sustainable operations.
Right. Yeah. I mean, payment's huge, right? if
Yeah.
there's no payment codes, and yeah, it's one of the questions I asked somebody recently, a CEO of a emerging med tech company that's part of a portfolio company that develops next gen. And I was asking him, it seems that it would be very difficult to just introduce a new product to the med tech space, as opposed to looking at gaps within a predicate device, for instance, and solving some of those gaps, because there's that history, the regulatory path, payment codes. I think that it's a much easier path, right?
God. Yeah, it's certainly, there's different pathways for it,
Yeah.
but I think it's certainly easier to do kind of an evolutionary invention than something that's revolutionary.
Right. Right. There was some work I was reading, at Wake, I think the hospital system, you guys were doing some testing or some evaluation. Can you dig into that a little bit?
Yeah, so we have partnerships at both UNC Rex and at Wake Med. Our students get in and they're able to shadow over the summer. At Wake Med in particular, this past year, we partnered with their Wake Med innovations team, and they came to us with a problem that they wanted us to help them solve. And so this was a nurse had an idea for developing a pediatric distraction toy. Essentially, the core premise is that kids when they're in a hospital, they're getting moved from their hospital rooms to their procedure rooms. They're anxious, right? And they don't know what's going to happen. They don't know what to expect. And sometimes you have to deliver anti-anxiety medications to those patients. And there's been some research done that shows that if you can distract them with a toy or with a game, you can reduce the amount of anti-anxiety medication that you have to deliver to the patient, and you just improve the overall quality of that patient's experience and the provider experience as well. And so, WigMed has a fantastic child life specialist team and pediatric nursing team, and we were able to partner with them over the summer. They have kind of off the shelf toys that work really well for a younger audience, anywhere from 1 to age 4. But what you find is that 4 to age 10, they start to age out of the toys that they have or that they can buy. And so they were asking us, our department, our students, to see if we could come up with a fun game or a fun series of game or a toy that we could develop for that age 4 to age 8, age 10 patient. And so we worked directly with them over the summer. We went through really 3 or 4 rounds of prototyping at the subsystem levels and built it up into the system level. And we delivered it in the middle of August, the first prototype, and the documentation required to replicate it. So at the moment, it's 3D printed. It's essentially a spaceship.
Mhm.
The intent is to have kids feel like they're an astronaut, right? And so there's some IMUs in it. So if you take the whole thing and you rotate it around, you can play a little asteroid game through the LED lights that are there. There's buttons that you can press, and the kids call it spamming the button, like
Yeah.
you're just
Yeah.
pressing the button repeatedly over and over again. We've got like a little laser that's shooting out things, and there's a steering wheel with a maze on it. It was really cool. We delivered it, as I said, in August, and as we had it set up in their lobby, and there were actually kids coming through the lobby, and they were all wanting to play with it.
Oh,
And so we're stopping what we were doing and showing the kids
Yeah.
this thing, getting real time user feedback. So it was an awesome project to do with them, and I hope that we get a chance to do something like that again next year.
Wow, that's a great opportunity. We're as engineers and kind of nerdy guys, like we love all this technology, minimally invasive, because we want less trauma on the patient, less burden on the system and their families. And anxiety is a huge part of that whole stay and those procedures. And it's interesting to think about it from a different perspective on a child, reducing their anxiety with something like a toy. It's amazing.
Yeah, it was really cool. It was a
Yeah.
great opportunity.
Yeah, good. Awesome. Well, look forward to hearing more about that, and appreciate the invite to participate in one of the classroom settings coming up in the fall.
Yeah, I'm excited to get to leverage your knowledge, really, about medtech. The way that the products are put together, especially in that extrusion catheter space. I
Mhm.
think that's one of the classes that we actually have in the fall, as medtech, materials and manufacturing methods. And happy to go into this a little bit more too. But that's a really unique class that we deliver to.
Yeah, that seems to fall right into my wheelhouse, so I'm looking forward to that. And I know that you have some other great people, in North Carolina participate. T-Lock Shaw, and I think we're both, and we haven't talked about Arun Mahani. We're both
Mhm.
friends with him. He's a great guy, lives in that area as well. He's involved at some level as well, right?
Oh yeah, Arun taught our 501 class last year. He's a
Okay.
really good friend and
Yeah.
just an outstanding leader too.
Yeah.
I love getting to interact with him.
Yeah. Great guy. I did some video work with him on his metals division, and Monroe, Connecticut, and some fascinating work that they do, laser processing hypotubes for surgical robotic applications, among other things.
Oh yeah, they're fantastic at that.
Yeah. All right, great. It was great to get into that. And again, look forward to kind of being involved in one of those sessions. And that class is, like I said, right up my alley. So
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm happy to get involved even more than that, if that works for you sometime. Let's get
Yeah.
into some of the real interesting work that your team and the company at NOAA Medical is doing with their Galaxy system. And if you can kind of set the stage um, for that system and some of the unmet needs in bronchoscopy. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but if you can kind of help us out there and give us an overview of what you're doing there, and then we can go over the tech platform.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been leading like a dual role, right? I
Yeah.
have an academic side and I have a professional side. I think that's one of the unique aspects about our MedTech program. It's all taught by professionals, but digging into the NOAA medical side, I'd say about 2/3 of my career has been spent in surgical robotics, and I've been at NOAA for a little over 3.5 years. Um, Stepping away to take a little bit more of a full-time role in the MedTech program.
Mhm.
But NOAA Medical is one of three companies that has a robotic bronchoscopy system. The other two, J&J with the RS system, the Monarch system, and then
Mhm.
obviously Intuitive with an Ion platform. So there's a massive need in lung cancer screening. It's really challenging to do this manually. Uh, you have manually driven bronchoscopes that you navigate into the lung. They're planar steering plus a little bit of rotation, which is kind of ergonomically challenging. It's hard to get a stable. It's hard to be stable while you're trying to do the biopsy. It's hard to navigate those systems all the way out to the periphery of the lung. And so, historically, the diagnostic yield rates, which simply is a measure of, how how what percentage of those patients actually gets a call on whether or not this is cancer
Mhm.
or benign in the procedure or shortly after the procedure is relatively low. I think historically it's been 60-70%.
Wow.
Um, you know, the Monarch system was first to market, came out. Ion was a fast follow. They've had some improvements in the diagnostic yield rates, and they've also improved the ability to get to those cancerous lesions earlier because with a robotic system you can be a little bit more precise and you can actually a little bit more accurately. But the diagnostic yield rates have still persisted. There's been the low diagnostic yield rate has still
Mhm.
persisted. There have been advancements in imaging to try to improve that. Cone beam CT is one such technology. But the opportunity at NOAA has been to try to really improve that screening process. And so, what, what we realized is that you essentially have preoperative imaging that you're navigating out to, and there's many things that can impact the accuracy of the target with using preoperative imaging. The patient positioning, breathing, many different things within the lung can mean that there's small errors in terms of where that lesion is, and those lesions might be really small. They might be sub-centimeter. And if there's any error in the position that you think the lesion is in relative to where it actually is, that can impact the accuracy of your ability to get a true biopsy of that tissue.
Mhm.
And so that's where NOAA is attempting to improve that, along with the convenience of doing the procedure as well through single use devices.
Okay. Yeah, that's a key point. It is a single use device, right? And I know there's a big issue in endoscopy with this reprocessing, right? Especially during COVID, resources, cleaning, reprocessing, contamination, infections. And so this is a single use device, or the
Yeah,
least,
exactly.
no.
The other one is device performance, right?
Yeah.
These are really small, in some cases, delicate
Yeah.
devices, and so you have to you have to make them as robust as possible. But you're using things like PTFE liners and things that inherently break down as you pass sharp tools, through small articulations in a working channel, for example. And so if you punch a hole in a working channel liner, you can lead to ingress of fluids, things like that.
Mhm.
And that becomes a potential vector for disease transmission downstream. And so you get not only with a single use device, you get the same performance that you expect on a per procedure basis without the potential for disease spread and those types of things. So it's really exciting to be able to do that. The challenge there in surgical robotics is making single use devices that fit a business model.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think historically surgical robotics has been about limited reuse, right? Intuitive has a number of laparoscopic devices that surgical robotic laparoscopic devices that are 10 to 20 reuse, and I think even their ion is 5 or 8 reuses. And so what we're attempting to do is again give you the same performance every time that you expect with a clean device and something that you can throw away without having to worry about reprocessing. It makes the case turnover time substantially more faster, and it makes cases more convenient.
Yeah. I read some of the data on hospital-borne acquired infections. It's amazing to me that's still a major issue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, it's hard to clean these devices. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're very small. They have small lumen.
Yeah.
And you have capillary action where you have fluid sucking up, right?
Yeah. Okay. Let's go. I want to share a video, and we can just kind of go over briefly. And this is from your website, the platform of the Galaxy Tool and Lesion Tomography System. If we can go through this briefly, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Let you.
Yeah. So you've navigated out into the periphery of the lung to try to find a lesion. And you take a biopsy tool and you try to push it into that lesion through the wall of the airway. We allow you to do tilt sweep, we call it, where essentially we're taking a number of different fluoroscopic images in 2D and we're reconstructing the 3D image of that. And this allows us to essentially precisely show you that your tool is in the lesion. And if it's not in the lesion, we have the ability to precisely adjust the tip of the bronchoscope position so that you can actually get it into the tissue. I mean, again, this is the error between was CT to body divergence. Essentially, the preoperative imaging might be wrong, and the lesion may have shifted slightly, and that can impact your ability to get enough tissue to make a diagnostic call.
Very, very accurate.
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. Thanks for sharing that. It's really interesting. I think there was I don't know if you can talk about it, but I mean, it's an open source, but there was a Frontier, I think it was called the Frontier First in Human study.
Mm-hmm.
Or can you share any of the results of that, or just at a high level?
I'm going to have to refresh my memory on this.
Okay. That's okay. I didn't bring it up. I saw that recently and I was like, oh, that's interesting. It's the first in human study, but if you're not up to speed on it, that's okay.
Yeah, I'm not up to speed on that
Okay.
one. Unfortunately, I tend to be on the R&D side
Yeah.
rather than on our clinical side. So,
Okay.
yeah,
It was good though. I mean, from what I read, so we can share that later, but
yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, hey, Matt, this has been a great conversation. Good work at NC State with the MedTech program, and we look forward to seeing how that process progresses and getting some of these young students into the MedTech. We need talent, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's the goal. We're trying to upskill students so that they're ready for careers in medical devices and medical technologies. We do a great job with internship placement during the year, but we also our students are ready to contribute on day one when they get jobs in industry. And so that's I mentioned it previously, but it's taught. This course is entirely taught by professionals who've been there, who've been executors in medical device development. So it's not academic. This is a very practical program, and our students are fantastic when they graduate. They're 3 to 5 years ahead of peers by the time they're graduating because they've lived it. They're learning from the best, and it's really exciting to see what they're coming up with.
Yeah, good job. It's amazing what you guys are doing there, and keep it up, and hopefully we can have some. It's an entrepreneurship program as well, and we can start some new MedTech companies in North Carolina as well, right?
Absolutely. That's the
Yeah.
goal. It's,
Yeah.
the challenge in entrepreneurship is always ultimately funding, right?
Yeah.
And, trying to figure out ways to cross that chasms, and get students funding. We have raised, $565,000 in the history of the program. Some of those through SBIRs, angel investments, things like that. So, we've had some early success. We'd love to see a little bit more of that.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, keep up the good work, Matt.
Yeah. Thanks, Steve.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for joining me today.
Absolutely.
All right.